From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to this edition of The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. China has just concluded an important chapter, the 14th five-year plan, marked by historic strides in technological innovation, a green transition, and strides in high-quality development. As the nation unveils its 15th five-year plan, we're honored to sit down with a distinguished global thinker who has witnessed decades of Chinese transformation. Joining us today is Professor Grzegorz Kołodko, former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Poland, a renowned economist and a longtime observer of Chinese political economy. What is his assessment of China's economic resilience through the decades? How does he view the prospects of China-Poland relations and China-EU dynamics amidst a complex global landscape and Trump 2.0? And what role can China's development model play in shaping inclusive globalization and the future of global governance? Here's our conversation. Professor Kołodko, let's talk about the Chinese economy, something you have been focusing substantially on from a scholar's perspective. What do you think are the most important milestones, features of the past 5 years under this 14th five-year plan? What do you consider as the most important?
I think it's still remarkable progress. Pretty often in the West, one may hear that China has slowed down. Somebody is even expecting so-called hard landing. Fortunately, because of the wisdom of macroeconomic management and development strategy, it has not happened. Still, the average rate of growth, 5.5% in terms of increment of GDP, is over twice higher than the world average and much higher than in the developed advanced economies of the West. So for that reason, coming to the end 14 five-year plan period, China has caught up with the developed world still farther. And I think it's remarkable also because of improvement of microeconomic management, growing quality of the human capital, and despite, what I have to stress, unfavorable international circumstances. China very much depends upon what is going on outside of China as far as economic development is concerned. And it was not that easy to sustain over 5% average rate of growth during these 5 years.
But it has been a mixed bag, if you look at it, isn't it? There are bright spots. For example, this year marks the 20th anniversary of President Xi's theory of lucid waters and great mountains, our mountains of gold and silver. There has been this very aggressive campaign focusing on, working towards a green transition. It's taking place everywhere you go in China. Green industries, electric vehicles, lithium batteries, county level villages, booming tourism, ecotourism. But also, on the other hand, consumption in China has been a little underwhelming, let's put it mildly. Chinese are saving more than they spend. How do you look at these competing dynamics marking the Chinese economy in the past 5-6 years?
I believe that dynamics would be even higher if China's strategy, economic policy, was more successful in shifting from investment and export as two major driving forces behind economic growth to increasing the importance, the role of consumption. I was a couple of times Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs in my from China's perspective, small country, Poland. I would be happy to have such a challenge, how to raise the rate of consumption within the GDP. We have completely different problem in Poland. We have very low, too low rate of investment. And in China, I think is still a room to shift a part of absorbed GDP from investment to consumption and to give a boost to consumption as a driving force behind the economic development.
Professor Kołodko, discussions on the 15th five-year plan is underway. What is your outlook for China's growth potential under this latest blueprint? And in your opinion, which reforms should be prioritized in this 15th five-year plan?
It's very important, and I do appreciate that China still is using this mega instrument that is the long-term planning, yet it has changed the character. It is not anymore mandatory quantitative planning as it used to be in the past. It is more of an indicative character. I think that the business people also of the private entrepreneurship, which do not have to follow the orders of the central government, are carefully listening and watching to direction, to the accents, to the instrumentation which will be presented in this 5 years plan for 2026-2030, because it's a kind of guidance how to act at the time where the market forces are more and more important than in the past. And my second comment is, elsewhere in this world, we have another leader, Trump 2.0, as I referred to the 47th president of the United States. There is nothing like long-term planning, long-term development strategy. There's only this megalomania, America first, make America great again. President Xi Jinping is not shouting, make China great again. Both America and China are great economies and great countries and so on. But China has the ability to manage the long-term process of development beyond the horizon. We are talking about the 5 years plan for 2026, 2030, but it is an instrument, it is a step towards what already China's strategy is taking into account, looking toward 2050. So I'm taking a look for the 15th National Plan for Economic Development in China as another segment before we will have subsequent 4 5 years plans which will bring China to 2050. So there is the determination, there is the accountability, there is the vision, not an illusion, how to keep the things under control to move the progress of economy and society forward. So for me, as a macroeconomist, which are also trying to follow what and why and for what reason is occurring in China, this 15th 5 years plan is just an instrument of the long-term, more balanced, sustainable development, which of course will raise China's well-being of Chinese people still further without shouting, make China great again, as it is happening in some other countries.
You wrote articles on that very issue. You said basically that the alienation of Europe is inevitable given Trump's 2.0, Trump's America First policy. Can you elaborate on that for us, especially shedding light on what that means for China-European relations? As we know for a fact, Beijing has been very keen on improving and fixing relations with Europe despite their differences.
I have published recently a book on second presidency of President Trump and his, I would say, I won't hesitate to say so, ill-advised policy. This Trumponomics, that is the economic thinking and acting of the second Trump administration, is neither fruitful, positive for America's US development, and definitely it is negative for the global economy development. I think that one of the driving force behind Trump 2.0, this Trumponomics and Trumpism, is to contain China's development. President Trump is not making it a secret that he is anti-Chinese in his feelings and doings, sometimes acting in quite irrational way as far as his protectionism and trade war policies are concerned. So for that reason, I think that at the end of the game, because it is a kind of geopolitical game, I know the name of the winner. The winner will be not the United States, contrary to illusion of President Trump. The winner will be China. It is not making, Trumponomics, economic policy, development of China's economy anyhow easier. It is even more difficult because of making more difficult access for Chinese industries to still very huge American market because of turbulence we have in the international trade, etc. But the geopolitical situation is changing in favor not of the United States, but in favor of China. More and more people in more and more countries, maybe not necessarily in these most advanced Western countries, but in the so-called global South, are looking towards enhancing, enlarging, intensifying economic cooperation with China. So it is a little bit more difficult now under the Trump administration than it was even after previous American president Joe Biden administration. But China is flexible as far as economic policy is concerned. And I think it is also a part of this week's discussion of the leaders of China when they are making decisions how to organize, how to structure the 5 years plan to be even more resilient against this strong wrong winds which are going to China from United States.
Yeah, Professor, but where do you think all this leaves China-European relations going forward? You're sitting in Warsaw, a very historic and dynamic and progressive European city. Give us a sentiment of how at least Central and Eastern Europeans are perceiving their future.
The relations with China are critical for most of the countries in the world. We are also taking advantage of developing our relations with China, unfortunately for us, I mean for the European Union, actually for most of the countries of the European Union, including Poland. We have a very big trade deficit with China, but we not act the same way as Mr. Trump, who, whenever the United States has a trade deficit, he's saying that it is because the other country is cheating U.S., which is absolutely stupid. That also means that the United States is not competitive enough to challenge the quality, cost of production, technological specification, the products made in other countries. So the question is how to raise our productivity to have better access to the Chinese market and how to move towards what China refers to as win-win globalization to make it more fruitful.
On the other hand, BYD just launched a brand new factory in Turkey, and Great Wall Motors, as well as other Chinese electric car makers, premiered their production lines in Brazil, another country in the Western Hemisphere, with Turkey, of course, being this NATO country as well. I mean, there is an option. I mean, for President Erdogan, for example, he can come over here and attend the SCO summit, into the orbit of the global South, as well as being a loyal member to NATO. I mean, does this have to be mutually exclusive?
Yes, this is the problem of political economy of globalization. You are talking about China's 5 years plan, but I don't think there is any singular issue which can be addressed properly in China or in Poland if we are not taking into account what is going on the international scale. And from that reason, it's very important how much the business people, the intellectuals, are contributing to solving this contradiction of ideas and contradiction of interest. Pretty often I'm talking about conflict between these two eyes, ideas and interest. And the more we will press the political decision makers to base also politics on knowledge, not only economy on knowledge, that will be better for us. And one more time, I'm putting some trust in China from this perspective. And yes, a lion's share of the contemporary trade war, Cold War, which was initiated again by United States and is aiming against China, first of all, is changing the situation. Most of the countries in so-called global south, in Latin America, definitely in Africa, and especially in South Asia, are closer to China, not only in economic dimension, but also in political dimension, because of policy of the United States. And not only now under Mr. Trump, because this policy was also with these characteristics under the previous administration of President Biden.
Talking about America's containment of China, you wrote an article comparing America's containment of Japan back in the 80s and early 90s, which eventually led to Japan's lost 2 decades. And you argue that China somehow is better positioned and better poised to counteract against America's containment strategies. Can you tell us all about that?
I think that the situation is similar and very different. The very big difference is that China is about 10 times more populous than Japan at that time you mentioned and now. China is too big to be defeated. Pretty often we hear in the West the notion, too big to fail. Definitely China is not going to fail, and China is too big to be conquered or to be pushed, outside of the development track by the United States. This is simply stupid, I may say, policy on the American side, because the question is how to use the cooperation to be more fruitful from one's own business, not to contain China. Very many means, especially used by President Trump, are aiming for containing the China. What he will do tomorrow or next week, we are not sure, because he is quite an unaccountable leader, contrary to China. We, by and large, most of the time, we know what we may expect from China's leadership. We don't know what we may expect from President Trump leadership. These days, he said again that he will impose 100% import duties on China's export to the United States, which is completely weird, because Mr. Trump still doesn't understand that the duties, import tariffs, are being paid by the importers in the United States. But it is, or if it will happen, I hope no, harmful for China. But in the longer run, we have to imply here the longer term analysis. With these exercises on the side of American administration, China is restructuring the geography of China's export. Yes, China's export during recent 8 months or so to the United States has contracted because of Trumponomics. But at the same time, China's export to the remaining part of the world, especially to the countries of Global South, has increased. China does export more this year than last year, and will export more in the next 5 years plan than was able to sell on the global market in the 2021, 2025. And the American containment is just changing geographical structure. And this geographical structure change is followed by the change of the political influence. It is quite weird, from intellectual perspective. It is difficult to understand the train of thought of Mr. Trump and his advisors and his government, his administration, why they are acting in a way which is harmful for United States, yet the aim of this policy is to be harmful for China. But sometimes they are it is even more harmful for American
Yeah, it certainly
business
backfires to many Americans, farmers, people in the Rust Belt, be they realizing that or not. But Trump is going to be around for 3 more years at most, if the U.S. Constitution stays that way. After 3 years, be it another Republican nominee president or a Democratic president, do you expect there to be more normalcy restored such as Trump's, Biden's 4 years in office, fixing cross-Atlantic relations, fixing alliances with their allies in Asia Pacific and their partners in Latin America? Or do you expect the Trump and his MAGA movement, the extreme right-wing movement, and their momentum and their political ideologies will be here to stay?
You mentioned before the case of Japan. Once upon a time, Japan was the deadly enemy of United States, and now it's a kind of friend and ally. So the things change, but neither in your or my lifetime, United States and China will be the friends and the allies against any other animal. There will be the competition between these two countries, but this competition can be peaceful, with mutual respect and win-win, as you would like to say in China. That is inclusive, contributing to the inclusive globalization, which is good for the development of the global economy. And now, as far as this Trumponomics is concerned, President Trump is in the office for the second time, already 8 months. And according to the Constitution, he will be there 3 years and 4 months still. Yet from time to time, he is mentioning that he may be for the 3rd term, which is impossible under the American Constitution. Who will be the next president? It's a big question. Hopefully, it will be somebody with a common sense, maybe from the Democratic Party, but it may happen that the other Republican will be at the helm of American policy. And that is the chance that it will be less xenophobic, more pragmatic, and more friendly towards the nations from other countries, and so on. So the question is now, how much to this process the China policy may develop? This great initiative for President Xi Jinping, global development initiative, and so on, global civilization initiative.
And also the global governance initiative proposed during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization a month ago. That is the latest pillar of the Chinese, foreign policy proposals and the proposals for the future of global governance.
Shanghai Development Organization is, I may say, another discussion club. It's a specific organization which is bringing together the leaders of the countries which have certain common interests. They have some parts of common shared ideological basis, but still they are quite different. Yet from Western part view, it's an important instrument of coordination of the policies, security policy, but also economic policy in a significant part of the global south, with the dominant position, of course, of China, and still very important position of Russia. So therefore, it is observed, it is analyzed in the West, including Brussels, London, Washington, also to some extent in Warsaw, in Poland, and definitely from the American and Western perspective, the progress of Shanghai Organization is not something what is welcome. The piece of American policy is to make contradictions within others' regional integration groupings. Trumponomics is hostile not only towards China, Trumponomics is hostile also towards European Union. Mr. Trump said that the European Union has been established a long time ago as a fall of the United States, which is a completely weird statement. So Trumponomics is making economic policy, development policy, quest for a peaceful solution to the ongoing conflict in many places of this world even more difficult. And now the question is how it will influence the relations between these countries and China. Once in the past I said, making a comment to the comment of Economics Intelligence Unit, which stated that the world of the future will be divided into 2 blocks. West, led by the United States, and East led by China and Russia. And from time to time, they will use the military leverage to raise their influence in the global South. Well, my reaction was that not necessarily, and hopefully they will never use the military leverage, especially I don't think that is what China may do, and so on. But I see the future of the world, and here also I'm referring both to China and Poland, different way. We consist of two parts, so-called Euro-Asian sphere and Euro-Atlantic sphere. And definitely Euro-Atlantic sphere is led by the United States, and Euro-Asian sphere is with the dominant position of China, but not having China as a leader. Eurasia is not only China, but it's also India, the ASEAN countries, and so on. And the European Union, including my country of Poland, we are the part of both Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian. And for that reason, the fine art of policy now and during next 5 years and in the following years, as far as the European Union is concerned, it's not to subside to the American pleasure and not to allow us to be an instrument in anti-Chinese policy of the American administration. It is not an interest of our business, of our people, of our nations, of our countries. It is easy to say, it is difficult to do, but I do know, I'm convinced that several political leaders, and definitely the business people in European Union, are very much aware of the fact. So what they think is one way, and what they say in public is another thing, because they must be careful, because we still have to manage somehow our relations with the United States, and at the same time, we have to improve our relations with China.
It is a delicate balancing act. Thank you so much for all these insights and perspectives. Professor Kołodko, has been a pleasure, as he always has. Come back again, please.
Thank you for having me.
That will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our news coverage continues on CGTN. Bye and take care.